For those that I have met previously, I'm John Mullen, the HR consultant with the HR booth. And for those I have not met, I look forward to meeting with you in the very near future. So what we're going to talk about today, it's a 60-minute workshop. Set the business context. It will cover all aspects of dignity at work, including bullying and harassment, discrimination, workplace etiquette and culture. Mix of information and practice sessions. As we said, some of the practice sessions will be slightly reduced today just for the purposes of time. However, it won't detract from the actual content of the workshop. And if there's any requirement for us to send any additional information, that will accompany the slide pack. Okay. Safe and confidential environment to learn. So if anybody wants to give any examples from previously, if they want to pass information, again, we can look at doing that. And we won't be holding somebody accountable saying, why did you say that? And it will be underpinned by the equalities policy, more of which we will touch on during the course of the presentation. So to explore areas of current practice in managing harassment, bullying, workplace etiquette and equalities, aims of today. See what your knowledge is, and more importantly, understand the risks of poor decisions and practice in these areas. What we will do at the end of the presentation, we will quickly go through a few examples of cases which have actually gone to tribunal, okay, and see how they've got there and obviously some of the decisions that were taken. Again, what we'll look at doing is encourage your skill set. So if you do have to intervene in any aspect at all of dignity at work, you will be fully versed and able to do so. And as we says, upskill you to make better decisions and improve the practice in relation to dignity at work. Okay, that aims for today. So, dignity at work. What is dignity at work? Again, if I asked each and every one of you, I'm sure you would all come back and you'd give me, you know, your version of what it means to you. An example that we have here is this. Big part there. It's based on a commitment to cover all forms of unacceptable behaviour and to treat all employees with respect. That particular quote has been taken from the Dignity at Work Partnership. Bullying and harassment. We have here, as it's on screen, many forms. Generally viewed though as unwanted behaviour that can offend someone in a demeaning and unacceptable way, including intimidating, insulting, or a misuse of power to undermine and humiliate. Some people do think that it relates just to the physical aspect of someone, I don't know, having the hair pulled, kicked, etc. It does take all forms there. Harassment, more importantly, this is a constant thing, a constant interference or intimidation that violates someone's dignity or creates a hostile or degrading working environment. Again, this quote here is from the Dignity at Work Partnership. Look at equalities and discrimination. So there are the protected characteristics under the Equality Act, and as we can see there are a large number of them showing up here, which will include a multitude of virtually every aspect you can think of in regard to an employee here. You're looking at the general things, you know, their age. Is there anything that would be covered under disability? More important now, gender reassignment, the marital status, any aspect relating to pregnancy and maternity, someone's race, colour, religion or philosophical beliefs, and looking at towards the end there, sexual orientation. Not just that actual sexual orientation, but also that perception as well. If, for instance, a gentleman happens to be camp, does that necessarily follow that he must be gay? Okay. When we're looking at direct discrimination, it's pretty obvious as to why you could be looking at discriminating against somebody. If, for instance, our club was to say that we were looking at being male only, it's very obvious that that discrimination has taken place, hasn't it? No females allowed. You see instances previously where in the Barrow days where someone could say that, you know, again, to be a member of a particular club, a particular society, you had to be of a particular you know, age, for instance, isn't it? Over 35s only. Direct discrimination. Indirect, however, is when you're trying to put in place a rule with the intention of not having an impact on any of the protected characteristics. If, for instance, you said that to be a member of a gym, you had to be on the electoral roll, you are indirectly discriminating against members of the travelling community who wouldn't be on the electoral roll, for instance. So one of the things we could look about, there can be instances, what's got there is when this is justified or when this cannot be justified. If you're looking at, for instance, saying that to work behind a bar, you must be over 18, again, if you're putting in place a rule or policy on the grounds of age, that is something where can that be justified? Again, you can look at that. The bar is actually quite unusual in that to work behind the bar, you have to be over 18. However, to be a waiter and carry drink, alcohol from the bar to the table, you have to be over 16. Bit of a discrepancy there. You can also look at some of the courier companies, for instance, where they would put in stipulations that a driver must be over 25, again, for insurance purposes. There are also aspects where some of the care companies, due to the stipulations that would apply from their clients, if they were to say that, you know, females request female-only carers to administer personal care, then they could look at, you know, a caveat at this moment in time: no recruitment of males due to the, you know, lack of work for them in this instance. Well, let's a quick look here. For the individuals, for the participants today, what policies and procedures are there in place to protect and promote the employees' wellbeing at work? Again, would employees know where they happen to be located? If they don't, this is something that needs to be considered and needs to be undertaken differently. An equality and diversity policy. What's known as the family policies: maternity, paternity, and adoption. The employee code of conduct. And a harassment policy, including bullying. Is there a grievance or disciplinary policy? It'll take a few moments for those. It's worth just noting down, have you ever come across them? The second one down, for instance, the maternity, paternity, and adoption policy, that tends to be something that you would look at only if it was relevant to you at that particular time. A lot of the other ones, if they're in there, where are they? Where are they located? Would you know where to go and find them? With those policies, what we are looking at now is the negative effects of bullying, harassment, and negative behaviour. As we've touched on already, bullying, harassment, and other forms of negative behaviour can cost the organisations and the businesses time and money. if it is allowed to go unchecked, exposes the business to risk and can result in lots of time and money spent investigating and resolving complaints. You know, you're all very, very busy people. You will be taken away from your day job, first of all, if you're a manager, to investigate, and secondly, if you're one of the team members and you're asked if you have witnessed anything. Again, what we're looking at here would be, there's additional recruitment costs. If somebody is experiencing bullying or harassment, the chances of them wanting to remain at work is, unlikely. They are looking at thinking of going on to somewhere new. They may think that it's not been addressed, and rather than stay and challenge it, they're going to go elsewhere. The consequence of that, obviously, is that the individuals need to be replaced. The costs will be incurred from placing of adverts, sifting of adverts, taking time to interview, and then getting somebody up to speed as well. You're losing potential skills that have been within the business. And if it does go wrong, as we'll touch on at the very end, there can be expenditure on either tribunals or financial settlements. What does it mean for people in the workplace? Well, again, if you happen to encounter this, if it's happened to take place in your particular area, the morale is not going to be great. People are not going to be performing at their best. There's going to be lots of trust issues. Somebody's walking into the room, people are laughing. Are they laughing at them? Is there something going on? As we said, all of which will impact on the productivity and performance. If ever it's addressed, the positive of it can be that if anything is raised and it's seen to be actioned, people know that it will be dealt with appropriately. You will have a diverse workforce. It doesn't matter, as we've touched on, anything at all to do with your age, gender, religion, etc. Then it is a diverse workforce which is welcomed. Again, because people are happier in the workplace, they're more content, it is a positive place to work, they're more likely to come to work, more likely to stay at work. They will not look to seek pastures now. Coupled with that then, clearly there'll be fewer complaints and grievances. Consequently, fewer internal investigations and potential costs of litigation. Reputation of the business is enhanced, and again, it's much easier to recruit. It's seen as a diverse workforce. Looking at things from an employee engagement aspect, what we class this as the involvement of the employees excuse me, in influencing any decisions about the way they work, the environment, and the product they provide. It's empowering the members of staff. It's important that this is seen as something which is actually realistic. If it becomes a tick box exercise, and employees have gone through this before, and just seeing it as yet another initiative which we've tried many times, that's all it becomes. If, however, it is seen to be doing, and employees are given the perception that if you do raise anything with us, that you can influence. Just because something has been done before doesn't mean to say that's the way it always has to be. You are able to challenge. This also gives the outlook as well that if there is anything which is causing an employee any sort of undue pressures, if they feel that they are being bullied or harassed, or as it has there again, any form of undesirable behaviour, they can raise it, and they can raise it freely, safe in the knowledge that it will be done and actioned with. as we have at the end of that particular bullet point, this is all about encouraging the relationship, which is based on trust and respect. What's meant by the phrase a positive working environment? As we have here, it's creating an atmosphere, and it's one that encourages employees to give their best for the organisation in line with the aims and objectives. As we've touched on previous slides, if an employee is unhappy, they're not going to be doing that at all. Again, many key aspects of a positive work environment. Big one there again, the high level of trust, a genuine concern for the quality of work and life, and by managers displaying the behaviours which are expected, not following the do as I say, not as I do mantra. And it needs to be consistent across the entire organisation, regardless of which area, which sector you happen to work within the business. It brings us on to inappropriate conversations in the workplace. If they take place, again, they carry the risks of breach of confidentiality. Again, we are performing our role on a daily basis. We know what's happening, what's taking place. A lot of this is on a need to know. We just need to be careful of what could overhear things, because there is that risk there of offending our colleagues and the general public. Consequence again from that would be complaints from the people we just mentioned, that previous point there, our colleagues and the general public. With this will then be claims that if there has been a conversation taking place, has there been discrimination? Has somebody been harassed? Or is there victimisation, which could potentially lead to employment tribunal? The consequence of that would be reputational damage to the business. Once that reputational damage has taken place, it is very, very hard to get back. I'm sure if I asked you now, there are a whole lot of companies where you could provide me with examples of where their reputation has been damaged and how they're trying very, very hard to get it back, or how that damage has been done and it's been irretrievable. So what should we avoid talking about within the workplace that may carry the risk of being deemed as inappropriate? Now again, some of these will be, we're not going to say you would never discuss them, but it's knowing what you should and shouldn't talk about and when it should be acceptable, as we'll go into more detail. So religion, politics, so sex or sexual orientation, your health or the health of others, finance and wages, and the good old office gossip. Take the first point, religion. Again, your own religious beliefs are exactly that. They're yours. It's what you happen to feel. Faith, as we know, it's a very, very personal thing. Big thing here is avoid sharing your opinions about your beliefs or your lack of, and it's any media here, text, email, spoken conversations. And don't try to persuade anyone to convert to your religion, even if you think that it is the best and that you're saving them. You should not do it. As well here as well, it's a very personal thing. We've touched on already. Doesn't mean you should hide your religion, though, or you should be proud of it. But people do have their own ways of worshipping, and it's not to say that yours is necessarily the correct way. If you don't like what your colleague does or the way they happen to do, again, they probably don't want to hear you telling them that they are wrong and that they should convert and that your religion is the correct one for them. As we did touch on earlier, religion is one of the protected characteristics under the Equalities Act. Moving on to politics. Again, this has been quite topical recently. We've had yes, no, we've had Brexit, in, out, etc. So people will talk about it. Some people are very serious about their political affiliations. You know, you will have people that are, you know, lots of canvassers. They will go around, you know, during election times. There will be topical conversations, but what we're saying is avoid getting into lengthy conversations about politics at work. It's know when to let go. If you have had a conversation, another person's walked away, go start chasing them and saying, come on, admit you're wrong. It is an individual's personal choice which candidate, which party they propose to vote for. While you might want to debate it with them, it's not for you to say, you know, you've absolutely no chance, I can't believe you're doing this. Can you not see what's happening here? Again, as we have there, they're not likely to agree with you. All you're going to do is end up in an argument or potential grievance. That's what I have here as well. There is a risk here of disciplinary procedures becoming necessary to determine if an act of misconduct or gross misconduct has taken place. It's all about, say, you know, knowing when to stop the conversation. It's the big thing of, it's not how you've meant it, it's how somebody has taken the points that you've given. Sex and sexual orientation next. Again, some people do object, you know, where explicit sexual language or innuendo is there. If it does take place in the workplace, it can be construed as discrimination. It doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, just something which has been said. It can be something which has been written down, again, including text and emails. Where this language happens to be used and its intention, this may be viewed as misconduct or gross misconduct. With conversations which you think can or were private, as we've touched on earlier, these can be overheard. And if you have produced a text or an email, it can be forwarded on and you've lost all control over it. What you think may have just been a private email between the two of you has suddenly gone viral. Again, the best thing to do is just remember where you happen to be. You're in the workplace. You're not at home. You're not with friends, etc. You're in the workplace. Just be aware of the language you're using. Again, that's the way to be safe. The big point there, the language of the workplace, that's not an excuse to use such language. I'm going to cover finance and wages. Again, it's very, very personal what people do have, what they do happen to get paid, their particular hourly rate, etc. Lots of people love to speculate, but it should not be the subject of conversations in the workplace as we have there. It is very, very private and confidential, and of course it's subject to rules governed under the GDPR. With personal wages, it is confidential as well. You shouldn't go around comparing wages. If you happen to be in a position where you are aware clearly of the rates of pay, who somebody, somebody has been recruited on, it should not be the subject of general conversation. If you have any issues, discuss them with your manager or direct with payroll. And as we've touched on just earlier in the slide, about people's pay rates, they should not result in inappropriate conversations. People will be overhearing these. Your health and the health of others, everybody does it. How are you today? The last thing you expect is for somebody to respond back with lots and lots of detail on how they actually are. You know, we will unfortunately all experience illness or injury at some point. If we have anything again, then speak with your boss or your colleague. Sorry, Deans will give your colleagues and your bosses reason to wonder what's been keeping you from your job. So just, you know, make sure that you do, if you have anything at all, don't dwell on it, share it with them. Your boss in particular. If you are sharing it with your boss and you become aware as a team leader again, that's something you've been told in confidence. It's not for you to go and start to discuss with other members of the team. It is all confidential. Again, the point just to be aware of is you would not want to have anything regarding your health discussed with other members of the team. So just don't do it. Don't participate in such conversations. It can be viewed as discriminatory as well. The favourite takes place everywhere. Every single workplace that you go, there will be lots of gossip. Again, avoiding gossip at all costs. They will try and involve you in conversations. As it's got someone who happens to be absent today, where are they? They're always off. Have you seen what's happening here? I'm always having to pick up on their work. They're never in here. Can't believe the amount they're getting. And the good old gossip as well. X is working late, so is Y. They must be having an affair. Advice there is, if you do happen to encounter this situation, just walk away, or saying, I don't think you should be talking about them behind their backs. Again, don't join in. You don't know, as we've touched on, who may well be listening. Moving into when you're in the workplace, basic workplace etiquette that should be followed. Again, it's respect for your employer. Be on time. Right attitude to work. We all have things going on in our personal life, but if we can, leave them at the front door. Professional dress code, again, where appropriate. Again, with lots of movement towards open plan offices, just be aware of the noise and how this may impact on your colleagues. Somebody's got their head down and you're standing behind them, having conversations, or you're talking loudly, just be aware. Again, your workspace clean and tidy. On your mistakes, you know, it's couldn't be me. I was on holiday that day. If something has taken place, you know, we learn to, you know, learn from any mistakes, lessons learned, isn't it? Big part here, respect your fellow workers. It's the old treat everybody the way you'd like to be treated yourself. If you do happen to be in a position where you have members of the team working for you, again, don't take undue advantage of that position. As we just touched on, confidentiality and data protection are important. If you are aware of something and it is a need to know, make sure that's the way it stays. Don't go and share other things out with people who maybe do not require access to that information. And the big one, respect each other's privacy. If you're at their desk and emails are coming in, don't start looking over their shoulder and say, oh, what's that? What's coming in here? Look at the culture, again, within the organisation. And it's all the traditions, beliefs, etc., as it has on their behaviours and attitudes. It is the workplace environment that's supplied for the employees, and we will find that if all needs and values are consistent with theirs, employees become more motivated and are satisfied within the workplace. If we were asked to come in and evaluate the workplace culture, these are the 12 categories that we would be evaluating the workplace culture against. Maybe in your own time, you could look at this and think, actually, we do that, that, and that, absolutely wonderful. Maybe a little bit more work required in that area. So I'm sitting in the group's language, the decision making, the symbols, story legends, and daily work practices. What we're looking here as well as the objects chosen to grace a desk tell you a lot about how employees view and participate on those. Now, if we're looking at the decision making, for instance, if, for instance, it is an open plan office, then what we're saying here is that the ability to raise any questions, any queries with your team leader is there. There's no boundaries such as you may experience, you know, in a separate office environment where the doors are there. symbols. You know what, this is the particular branding. Is it the branding? Is there a sort of core uniform or something? Are people proud? The story is, how have we got where we are? Coupled with daily work practices, are there? How do we happen to get things done? How do we follow on? Is it a case of just coming in, or is there clear and defined working practices that are in place? We're then looking at how the interaction of employees in meetings. Are people of a mindset where they feel that they are empowered, where they can raise a particular issue? If they're asked for their opinion, are they going to be able to give their opinion freely, or is it just going to be a case of everybody keeping quiet or nodding where they think they should be nodding? So the characteristics of a healthy workplace culture would be everyone being cordial with each other. The big thing again, as we keep the common theme today, is respect. It's respect for a fellow worker. As we have here again, nothing's gained from conflicts or nasty little, politics whilst at work here. And today they're workplace politics. Everyone again treated as one. Big thing here is that we judge our employees only by their work and nothing else at all. If people do happen to be in any sort of personal relationships, they do take a back seat at the workplace, and nobody is favoured just because they happen to be a relative. Everyone is taken and judged on the merit and the work they produce. As we've touched on the previous slide there, employees must be able to discuss anything, between themselves to reach better conclusions, and then obviously the ability to air what they happen to think those views are. Obviously, managers and team leaders will interact with their team members, and the big thing here is transparency. If something can be shared, it will be shared. If it is on the need to know, it'll be on the need to know. What we don't want to do is try and keep things and then having conjecture and people coming up with 2 and 2 and making a different answer there. I think here, manipulating information and data tampering is a strict no-no. Again, if we're asked to give our opinions and we are doing anything, it's going to be through an honest way. Nothing is going to be given which will be presenting an untrue picture. If the information happens to be something which people will not like, again, that's something we can take and we can deal with. Again, continuing the workplace culture, the organisation must have employee-friendly policies. Again, we've touched on those employee-friendly policies earlier with the code of conduct, the maternity policies, disciplinary grievance, etc. What we're saying here is expecting an employee to work till late in his birthday is impractical. Now, again, with that particular example, you would be looking at if, for instance, an employee has a particular milestone birthday and you were asking them to, suddenly forego this because something has came up which could wait. You're not going to get a lot of buy-in from the actual individual. If, on the other hand, they were ready to go out and suddenly something catastrophic happened and it's all hands to the pump and you were saying, look, you know what, I know this is happening, can you give us a hand? I mean, it's how it's sold to them, isn't it? What we're saying is if you're going to keep them there for the sake of keeping them there, you're not going to get much return anyway. Big thing though is discipline is important at the workplace from both sides. It gives both the employee and employer the actual expectations there of what should be undertaken. Again, the autocratic approach does not fit in with every scenario. As we have here, bosses, team managers, they're going to be mentors. That's what we're wanting. We're trying to have all of our team members up to the particular level that we want to be, following the role and following the expectations that we do have. And as we have here, there'll be a source of inspiration for their team members. Give direction where required, along with guidance where as necessary. big thing here, easy access to the boss's office if it's not open plan, obviously. Again, with that, you would be putting in place the caveat, my door's always open. However, if somebody's standing there every 5 minutes, then clearly, you know, they should be getting on with something else, isn't it? So the door's always open, but again, we've got here promoting team building activities to bind employees together, especially if there is going to be something taking place where it is either tough times or you've just, you know, taken over another part of the business and you are trying to bring people together to promote that sense of unity. Yeah, have team building activities. Again, it needs to be something where everybody can participate and where everybody would gain something from it. For instance, lining people up and saying, we're now going to do paintballing and firing lots of paintball bullets at them, you know, yeah, you might get some benefit from it. I'll leave that for you to work out. Workshops and presentations, again, similar to what we're doing just now, to upgrade the existing skills of the staff. As we know, there could be anything at all which may affect the circumstances, the current work climate. The situation clear with COVID-19, for instance, is a good example of that. We'll look at now is a few examples. Now, these are all cases which have been taken from the Employment Tribunal site, which is open source. By all means, you can go in there and have a look at your leisure. We'll give you a few examples of what's happened and how these things can end up the way they have them. First one we have here is a gay lawyer who discovered homophobic comments in one of his files, the case files that he was working on. So as we have there, so he found a handwritten note in which both he and his colleague were discussed. The remarks included a reference made to B's batty boy mate. So it was viewed by the tribunal that this did amount to direct sexual orientation discrimination, because it could be taken that a reasonable worker would have the view that this was to the detriment of them. So when I went to tribunal, what they noted is that the colleague who had investigated this particular grievance prior to this reaching tribunal had not received any awareness training whatsoever in any matters of equality, diversity, or the possibility then of unconsciousness as well as conscious prejudice were prevalent then. Next one, a heterosexual employee called Gay won a harassment claim. As we touched on earlier, one of the protected characteristics is perceived sexual orientation. This particular individual, heterosexual male employee, he won the sexual orientation and religious or belief harassment claim. And the important thing here is after repeated inappropriate remarks made verbally and by email. During one particular instance, his colleagues asked him whether he liked football. And when he told that he was not interested, his colleagues also replied, "You're gay then." He filed his grievance, which the HR director rejected on the basis that the remarks were office banter. And evidence provided by the company at tribunal was that this expression is quite normal in North East England football circles and is therefore treated as a joke. Okay, the claimant, Mr. Clements, who an employee in his 50s, manager had a few issues around his performance, and during a conversation with him, said to him, "You're not 25 anymore," and suggested moving him on to a different role. So as well here, Mr. C resigned and claimed constructive dismissal following further conduct by the bank. Again, went to tribunal, and what they decided was that he was constructively dismissed, but the dismissal was not one that was tainted by age discrimination. The part there around the comment about Mr. C's age was, however, discriminatory, and that showed that a one-off comment can amount to discrimination. Employee compared to a woman on My Big Fat Gypsy Wedding was harassed. My Big Fat Gypsy Wedding being a TV show. And the claimant, Ms. H, complained about the attitude of her line manager towards her Irish nationality. And the behaviour of the line manager included repeatedly liking H to women on that particular TV programme. However, when J was asked for her evidence, she said that the comments were, again, office banter and that she did not intend any malice. We've touched on it's not how you say it, it's how the other person takes it. It went to tribunal, and the tribunal upheld the claims of direct race discrimination, racial harassment, and constructive dismissal. Okay, the next particular case, this is where an employee was subjected to harassment, again compared to banter in the Carry On films. So the female employee was subjected to daily remarks. She's alleging that were of the same sexual nature as the theme of the Carry On films. And when her manager gave evidence that the banter, including strong language, was an everyday fact of life. Tribunal, however, viewed it differently and found that this amounted to sex discrimination and harassment. And their definition is that banter is a loose expression that covers what otherwise might be abusive behaviour on the basis that those participating do so willingly and on an equal basis. It can, however, easily transform into bullying when an employee has no alternative but to accept or participate in this to keep their job. Again, we've heard that many times before. It's just banter. However, this one, the monkey comment, amounted to harassment. So, when this particular case was looked at, the Employment Tribunal awarded the employee, as it has there, who worked in sales, over £2,000 for office banter that spilled over into racial harassment. In saying that the office environment, was conducive to healthy banter, but found that Mr. B, a Sikh, was harassed when he was called a monkey, or a cheeky monkey, during a golf match in which, as it has there, the business matters were being discussed. Again, when they were asked to present, they did say that the employer did have a very rudimentary policy, but there's no guidance, no training, no monitoring, and no policing of the policy. What we've done here is given a few examples of cases that have gone to tribunal. There are quite a few which are ongoing at the moment that haven't quite got there, and we haven't detailed in here, but obviously some of the other ones are, including the veganism case, which what we have done is we've gone through the workshop here. As we said, due to the number of participants, we have sort of kept the used the chat facility more on this occasion. Does anybody have any questions that they would like me to answer at this point? Is there anything that's in the presentation we'd like to raise with me?